For nearly 2 decades, Taylor Swift has been America's favorite underdog, the girl who turned heartbreak into power and pain into profit. But somewhere between the love songs and the billion-dollar tours, the story shifted. The victim became untouchable. The underdog became the empire. And suddenly the world began to wonder, can you still play the wounded girl when you own the stage? This isn't just the story of Taylor Swift, the pop star. It's the story of a woman who built an empire out of emotion, and what happens when the myth of innocence outgrows the person behind it. This is the story of Taylor Swift and the myth of the perfect victim. It all began with innocence, a teenage Taylor in sundresses and cowboy boots singing about love she hadn't lived yet. She was polite, wide-eyed, and completely marketable. Country music had never seen someone so pure and so eager to tell her own story in real time. Her early albums built a world where she was always the one left behind. You Belong With Me, 15, Teardrops on My Guitar. In every song, she was the overlooked girl, the one watching from the bleachers, and people loved her for it. Taylor wasn't edgy or intimidating, she was safe. She was the kind of girl parents liked and teenagers related to. The world saw her as the victim we could root for, and she learned quickly that being wronged was a role that paid well. The media loved her heartbreak. When Joe Jonas dumped her in a 27-second phone call, she didn't hide it. She turned it into a punchline on national TV. That's when the formula took shape. Every heartbreak became a headline, and every headline became a hit song. Taylor wasn't just writing music, she was writing survival stories. And with each story, the audience grew. Over time, she began to master the art of being wronged. Each feud, breakup, or betrayal became proof that she was still that same girl from Pennsylvania, fighting to be understood. It didn't matter how wealthy or powerful she became. She always found a new villain to keep the story alive. The world rewarded her for it. Every time she cried on an album cover, we cried with her. Every time she got back up, we applauded. Her pain became our entertainment, and her comeback became our catharsis. But then came 2016. The year the narrative cracked. The Kanye West and Kim Kardashian scandal flipped everything. The leaked phone call, the snake emojis, the internet turning on her overnight. It was the end of her innocence era. For the first time, Taylor wasn't the victim everyone defended. She was the manipulative celebrity people loved to hate. Her name became synonymous with drama. For a while, it looked like her story was over. Instead, she reinvented it. Reputation became her rebirth. Her snake era, her revenge era, her declaration that she didn't care what anyone thought. But even as she claimed her power, she still played the same role. The songs were darker, the tone sharper, but the message hadn't changed. She was still misunderstood, still the one everyone got wrong. Even when she became the villain, she found a way to be the victim. And we rewarded her again. Because Taylor Swift's power has always been rooted in pain. It's what makes her human, relatable, magnetic. She has turned vulnerability into an empire. Every time she's wronged, she transforms it into art. And every time she releases that art, she grows stronger. When Scooter Braun bought her masters, it wasn't just a business feud. It was another chapter in her survival saga. She didn't fight him in court. She fought him with narrative. She told her fans that her work had been stolen, that her voice had been taken, and they rallied behind her like an army. Taylor's version wasn't just about music ownership. It was about moral ownership. She wasn't reclaiming her songs. She was reclaiming her identity. She turned business into a battle cry, and in doing so, reminded her audience that she was still the girl fighting the bad guys. But there's a problem built into that kind of storytelling. What happens when the victim wins? Pop culture loves an underdog, but it also loves to move on. Taylor Swift isn't an underdog anymore. She's a billionaire, the most powerful woman in music, and arguably one of the most influential celebrities on the planet. She can crash Ticketmaster with a single tour announcement. She can move markets with a tweet. So when she still positions herself as the misunderstood outsider, it doesn't resonate the way it used to. The story doesn't fit the status anymore. Psychologists call this the perfect victim complex, when identity becomes so tied to being wronged that success feels like betrayal. For Taylor, being hurt has always been the source of connection. Pain keeps her relatable. But now, the bigger she gets, the harder it is to convince anyone that she's still the one being wronged. Every new scandal, every coded lyric, every Easter egg feels like a replay of the same emotional pattern. The girl who was hurt again, but this time she'll rise higher. Fans love it because it feels familiar. Critics roll their eyes because it feels predictable. You can feel that shift in the culture. There's empathy fatigue. People are starting to see the pattern, the choreography behind the pain. Every breakup aligns with an album rollout. Every feud fuels a new aesthetic. Every heartbreak becomes marketing. It's not that the emotions aren't real. It's that they've become so perfectly timed that they stop feeling spontaneous. Even her latest projects, the documentaries, the re-recordings, the cinematic universe of Taylor Swift, all orbit the same gravitational pull, redemption. She can't just release music. It has to mean something larger, something moral, something tied to suffering, because that's what the audience expects. That's how the myth survives. And here's the paradox. The moment Taylor Swift became untouchable, she stopped being believable. The myth of the perfect victim only works when the victim has something to lose. Today, she has everything. And yet, the world still expects her to cry, to be small, to be wronged. It's the curse of her own success. She taught us to love her pain, and now we don't know what to do with her peace. The myth of the perfect victim is powerful because it gives people permission to feel. We project our own heartbreaks onto her songs, and in return, she gives us closure we never got ourselves. But when that myth becomes a business model, the empathy starts to erode. What used to feel intimate now feels transactional. Every tear has a rollout date. Every wound has a pre-save link. And that's where the emotional illusion begins to fracture. Still, you can't deny her genius. Taylor Swift has always known exactly how to make the world feel what she wants it to feel. She doesn't just write songs, she engineers empathy. She turns heartbreak into theater, nostalgia into currency, and revenge into empowerment. She's not just a musician, she's a myth maker. But myths are fragile. Once you see the strings, the magic fades. Her greatest trick was convincing the world that authenticity and control could coexist. That she could be both the storyteller and the story. That she could cry into the mic while orchestrating the lighting. And somehow it worked. She built a global empire on sincerity that was meticulously staged. The result is a career so flawless it almost doesn't feel human. Maybe that's why people are starting to pull away, because we can't tell where the person ends and the persona begins. And yet, even in that contradiction, she wins again. Because Taylor understands the modern audience better than anyone. She knows that we don't want perfection, we want emotion. We don't want idols, we want mirrors. And she gives us both. She is the girl who made it and the girl who was broken. She is power wrapped in apology, dominance disguised as vulnerability. She is everything we've been taught to admire and everything we secretly resent. And that tension is what keeps her relevant. But the question is, how long can someone play the victim before the world stops believing? When empathy turns to skepticism and sincerity starts to sound rehearsed, can the myth survive? Taylor Swift built her empire on emotional honesty, but honesty isn't supposed to be this well-produced. Maybe that's her tragedy. She's no longer the kid writing songs in her bedroom. She's the CEO selling nostalgia for the girl who used to. The myth of the perfect victim made Taylor Swift unstoppable. It gave her power, protection, and a narrative that audiences couldn't resist. But it also trapped her in a loop where healing feels like betrayal and happiness feels like the end of the story. Because when your power is pain, peace feels like irrelevance. When your identity is the girl who gets hurt, what happens when you stop hurting? Maybe that's the era she's afraid to write, the one where she's not the victim, not the villain, just human. No snakes, no symbolism, no revenge arcs, just stillness. Maybe that's the real evolution waiting to happen. But until then, the performance continues. The spotlight stays warm, and the applause never really stops. Because Taylor Swift might not be the perfect victim anymore, but she's still the perfect story.